Dr. Zefara Kethvari stood at the edge of the great hall, watching the annual bonding ceremonies unfold before her. The space station's main gathering area buzzed with activity as hundreds of beings from across the galaxy mingled and searched for mates. Her translucent skin, which should have glowed with excitement, remained a dull gray color. The Etherians moved through the crowd with grace, their bioluminescent patterns shifting and dancing as they communicated through thought alone. When two Etherians found each other attractive, their minds would touch, sharing emotions and memories instantly. It was how her people had chosen partners for thousands of years. But Zefara was different. Born without the telepathic gift that defined her species, she could not touch minds with anyone. Her skin told her feelings through colors and patterns, but her thoughts remained locked inside her own head. To other Etherians, she was broken, incomplete, hardly worth noticing. She watched as a tall Etherian male approached a group of females near the center of the hall. His skin pulsed with confident blue patterns as he reached out with his mind. 3 of the females responded, their skin brightening with interest. They began the mental dance of courtship, sharing thoughts and feelings without speaking a word. Zefra had tried to approach him earlier, but he had looked right through her. When she spoke aloud to get his attention, he had seemed confused and uncomfortable. Speaking with voices instead of minds was seen as primitive among her people. The male had quickly moved away, leaving Zefra standing alone. This happened every year. Zefra would attend the ceremonies, hoping that maybe one Etherian would see past her disability. But year after year, she remained alone while others paired off around her. She was 32 years old now, considered an old maid by Etherian standards. A group of Vorthic warriors noticed her standing by herself. The large reptilian beings were known throughout the galaxy for their strength and their cruel sense of humor. They approached her with predatory grins on their scaled faces. "Look what we have here," said the leader, his voice deep and mocking. "A broken light bulb that nobody wants." The other Vortex laughed, their harsh voices echoing through the hall. Zefira's skin shifted to a darker gray, showing her distress. "Maybe she should be in the research labs instead of the mating hall," another Vortex suggested. "Scientists love studying defective specimens." "Perhaps we could fix her," the leader said, reaching out with one clawed hand. "Maybe a good shake would turn her telepathy back on." Zefira stepped backward, her skin now flickering with orange patterns of fear and anger. She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but her voice caught in her throat. How could she explain to these brutes that she was not broken, just different? "That's enough." The voice came from behind the vortex. It was calm but firm, spoken in clear galactic standard rather than telepathic communication. The warriors turned to see a human male approaching them. He was not particularly tall or strong-looking compared to the vortex, but something in his manner made them step back. "The lady is clearly not interested in your company," the human said politely. "Perhaps you should return to your own gathering." The Vorthic leader snarled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "This is not your business, Softskin. We were just having fun with the defective one." "Her name is Dr. Zefara Kethvari," the human replied, somehow knowing her identity despite never having met her. "She has published 17 papers on xenobiology and holds 3 advanced degrees." "I would hardly call that defective." Zefra stared at the human in surprise. Someone had actually read her research? Someone knew her work? The human stepped closer to the Vortex, still calm but now with an edge to his voice. "You can apologize to Dr. Kethvari for your rudeness. Or you can explain to your embassy why you started a diplomatic incident at a peaceful ceremony." The Vorthic leader looked around and noticed that other beings in the hall had stopped their conversations to watch the confrontation. Starting trouble at the bonding ceremonies would indeed cause problems with his superiors. He growled low in his throat but gestured for his companions to follow him away. "This isn't over, human," he muttered as they left. The human watched them go, then turned to Zephyra with a gentle smile. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Some people never learn proper manners." Zephyra found her voice at last. "Thank you for helping me. But you didn't have to. I'm used to being treated that way." "Nobody should be used to cruelty," the human replied. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, by the way. I'm a xenarchaeologist here on the station. You know my work?" Zephyra asked, her skin beginning to show faint traces of yellow curiosity. "Of course. Your paper on adaptive symbiosis in crystalline life forms changed how we think about non-carbon biology. I've been hoping to meet you actually." For the first time in years, Zephyra felt her skin brighten with genuine interest. Here was someone who saw her for her mind and her achievements, not for what she lacked. "The next research presentation is starting soon," Marcus continued. "Dr. Veltar from Androm Prime is speaking about consciousness transfer in energy beings. Would you like to attend together?" Zephyra hesitated. In Etherian culture, attending events together suggested romantic interest. But Marcus was human, and humans had different customs. Perhaps he was simply being friendly. "I would like that very much," she said finally as they walked toward the research amphitheater. Zephyra noticed something strange. Marcus spoke aloud, but somehow his words reached her more clearly than any telepathic touch ever had. He listened when she spoke, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk. "Dr. Chun," she said as they found seats in the amphitheater, "may I ask you something?" "Please, call me Marcus. And ask anything you like. Why did you help me back there? You could have gotten in trouble with the Vortex." Marcus considered her question seriously. "Because everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And because I believe that the things that make us different are often the things that make us most valuable." Zephyra's skin flickered with patterns she had never shown before. Colors that indicated deep thoughtfulness mixed with something that might have been hope. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen not what was missing, but what was there. The presentation began, but Zephyra found herself stealing glances at the human beside her. Marcus took notes by hand rather than recording everything mentally like most beings would. He asked questions that showed he understood complex concepts but thought about them in ways that were completely new to her. Maybe. Zephyra thought as her skin began to glow with the faintest trace of pink warmth. Being different was not always a curse. Maybe sometimes it was exactly what someone needed. 3 weeks had passed since the bonding ceremonies, and Zephyra found herself spending more time with Marcus than she had ever spent with anyone. They worked together in the xenarchaeology labs, studying artifacts that had been discovered on dead worlds throughout the galaxy. "This is fascinating," Zephyra said, her skin glowing with excited yellow patterns as she examined a crystalline object under the scanner. The molecular structure suggests it was created by a silicon-based life form. But the energy patterns are completely unlike anything we've seen. Marcus leaned over to look at her readings, careful not to get too close. He had learned that Etherians valued personal space differently than humans did. "What if we're thinking about this wrong?" he said. "Instead of looking at what it's made of, what if we think about what it was meant to do?" Zephyra tilted her head, considering his words. Other scientists on the station often dismissed Marcus's suggestions because he approached problems differently than they did. But Zephyra had begun to appreciate his unique way of thinking. "How do you mean?" she asked. Marcus picked up the artifact carefully. The moment his fingers touched its surface, the crystal began to pulse with soft blue light. Zephyra gasped, her skin shifting to bright orange with surprise. "It responds to you," she breathed. "It's been dormant for thousands of years, but it activates when you touch it." Marcus held the crystal up to the light, watching the patterns swirl within it. Maybe that's what it was designed to do. Maybe whoever made it wanted to communicate with beings who were different from them. Over the following days, they discovered that many of the ancient artifacts responded uniquely to human touch. Objects that had been considered dead for millennia came alive when Marcus handled them. It was as if the ancient civilizations had somehow known that humans would one day find these treasures. This changes everything we know about galactic history, Zephyr said one evening as they worked late in the lab. These artifacts suggest that humans were expected, planned for somehow. Marcus was concentrating on a particularly complex device that looked like a puzzle box made of metal and light. As he worked with it, turning pieces and adjusting connections, Zephyr watched his face. She had never seen anyone approach problems the way he did. While her people used pure logic and telepathic enhancement to solve puzzles, Marcus seemed to rely on something else entirely. "How do you do that?" she asked suddenly. "Do what?" Marcus replied, not looking up from the device. "The way you solve these puzzles. You don't calculate every possibility like we do. You just know somehow." Marcus paused in his work and looked at her. "I guess I follow my instincts. Humans call it intuition. We feel our way toward answers sometimes instead of thinking our way there." Zephyr's skin shifted to deep purple, the color of profound thought. "Your species has no telepathy, no mental enhancement, no direct mind-to-mind communication. Yet you accomplish things that we cannot. How is that possible?" "Maybe that's exactly why we can do it," Marcus said gently. "Maybe being disconnected from telepathy means we connect to things in different ways." As the weeks passed, Zephyr began to notice other remarkable things about Marcus. During a heated debate between research teams, he had managed to calm everyone down, not through logical argument, but by somehow understanding exactly what each person needed to hear. When Dr. Vexala, a normally cold crystalline researcher, had received news that her home world was experiencing natural disasters, Marcus had simply sat with her without saying anything. Somehow, his quiet presence had provided more comfort than any telepathic consolation could have offered. But the other Etherians on the station had begun to notice Zephyr's friendship with the human. She often found them staring at her with confusion and disapproval. One morning, her supervisor, Dr. Nethel, approached her in the corridor. "Zephyr," he said, his skin showing patterns of concern, "I need to speak with you about your association with the human." "Dr. Chun and I are working together on important research," Zephyr replied, trying to keep her own patterns neutral. "That may be, but others are beginning to talk. It is unusual for one of our kind to spend so much time with an alien, especially one so primitive." Zephyr felt her skin flush with anger, but she controlled it. "Marcus is not primitive. He's brilliant. Perhaps, but brilliance and compatibility are different things. The Etherian delegation is concerned that you are becoming too attached to someone with whom you could never truly connect." That afternoon, Zephyr found Marcus in the artifact storage room, carefully cataloging their recent discoveries. She had been thinking about Dr. Nethal's words all day. "Marcus," she said quietly, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," he replied, setting down his tablet to give her his full attention. "Do you ever feel lonely? Being the only human on a station full of telepathic species?" Marcus considered her question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I've learned that connection doesn't always require telepathy. Some of my best relationships have been with people who communicate very differently than I do." Zephyr moved closer to him, her skin beginning to show soft pink patterns that she had never displayed before. "When I'm with you, I don't feel defective anymore. I feel understood." "You were never defective," Marcus said firmly. "You're just different. And different can be wonderful." As he spoke, Zephyr realized something that shocked her. The colors dancing across her skin were the traditional patterns of Etherean romantic attraction. But more than that, she felt something deeper than mere attraction. She felt respected, valued, seen for who she truly was rather than what she lacked. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to love someone. The realization must have shown in her bioluminescent patterns, because Marcus's eyes widened slightly. He had learned to read her colors over their weeks together, and he could see that something profound had shifted. "Zephyra," he said gently, "your patterns." "I know," she whispered. "I can see them too." They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by artifacts from civilizations that had died long before either of their species had learned to reach for the stars. But in that moment, Zephyra felt more connected to another being than she ever had in her life. "This is impossible," she said finally. "My people don't form bonds with aliens. It's never been done." "Maybe," Marcus said, reaching out to gently touch her hand. "That's exactly why it's worth doing." As his fingers touched hers, Zephyra's skin erupted in brilliant cascades of gold and silver light. Patterns so beautiful and complex that they seemed to tell a story all their own. It was the most magnificent display any Etherean had ever produced, visible even from the corridor outside the storage room. And for the first time in her life, Zephyra didn't care who was watching. The observation deck was Zephyra's favorite place on the entire station. From here, she could see the swirling gases of the galactic core, millions of stars dancing together in an endless cosmic ballet. Tonight, she stood at the great window with Marcus beside her, both of them quiet as they watched the universe spin slowly past. Dr. Kethvari. The voice behind them was cold and formal. Zephyra turned to see Ambassador Drelthara, the leader of the Etherean delegation, approaching with 3 other officials. Her skin automatically dimmed to respectful gray patterns, though her heart began beating faster. "Ambassador," she said, bowing her head slightly. "We need to discuss your future," Drelthara said, her own skin showing the rigid patterns of official business. "The delegation has been patient, but your behavior has become a matter of concern for our entire species." Marcus stepped slightly closer to Zephyra, and she felt grateful for his presence, even though she knew it probably made things worse. "Your association with this human has gone too far," another official said. "It's time to make a proper choice." Ambassador Drelthara gestured, and 3 Etherean males stepped forward from behind the officials. All of them were handsome by Etherean standards, their skin showing confident patterns of blue and gold. Zephyra recognized them as successful scientists and diplomats, the kind of mates any normal Etherean female would be honored to consider. "These males have agreed to overlook your eccentricities," Drelthara said. "Despite your telepathic deficiency, they are willing to bond with you for the good of genetic diversity. You will choose one of them tonight, or face permanent exile from Etherean society." Zephyra felt her skin shift through several colors rapidly. Shock, fear, anger, and something else she couldn't identify. "Tonight, the final selection ceremony has been arranged," the ambassador replied. "The entire diplomatic community will witness your choice. We will not allow this embarrassment to continue any longer." The first male stepped forward, his patterns showing polite interest mixed with duty. "I am Dr. Silver. I study quantum mechanics at the Central Academy. I am willing to accept you as my mate despite your limitations." The second male nodded. "I am Commander Velthin of the Etherean Fleet. Your bloodline is still valuable, even without telepathy. Our children would serve the Empire well." The third male's patterns showed barely concealed disgust, but he spoke formally. "I am Researcher Nexla. The delegation has convinced me that bonding with you would advance my career. I am prepared to fulfill this duty." Zephyra stared at them, her skin cycling through colors so rapidly It was almost painful to watch. These males weren't offering love or even genuine companionship. They were offering charity, duty, career advancement. They saw her as a problem to be solved, not a person to be cherished. "You have 1 hour to prepare," Ambassador Drolthara said. "The ceremony begins at the next shift change." As the delegation left, Zephyra sank into one of the observation chairs. Her skin had gone completely white, a color that Etherians displayed only in the most extreme distress. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked, sitting beside her. "No," she said simply. "I'm not all right at all." Marcus waited patiently while she gathered her thoughts. This was something she loved about him. He never rushed her, never demanded immediate answers or explanations. "They want me to choose between 3 males who see me as defective," she said finally, "or lose my place in Etherian society forever. What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. Zephyra looked at him in surprise. "You're asking what I want?" "Of course. It's your life, your choice." Such a simple concept, but Zephyra realized that no one had ever asked her what she wanted before. Her parents had wanted her to be normal. Her colleagues wanted her to be useful. The delegation wanted her to be compliant. But Marcus was asking about her own desires. "I want," she began, then stopped. What did she want? "I want to be valued for who I am, not accepted despite who I am." "Then that's what you should have," Marcus said simply. Zephyra looked out at the stars, thinking about everything that had brought her to this moment. Her lonely childhood, her years of studying alone while others formed telepathic bonds, the endless rejection and pity from her own people. Then she thought about the past few weeks with Marcus, the conversations, the laughter, the feeling of being truly understood for the first time in her life. "Marcus," she said slowly, "what do humans do when they want to bond with someone?" "We ask them to marry us," he replied. "We make a promise to share our lives together, to support each other, to choose each other every day. No telepathy required?" "No telepathy required. Just commitment and love." Zephyra stood up suddenly, her skin beginning to glow with new patterns, colors that had never been recorded in Etherian biological texts. They were too bright, too complex, too beautiful for traditional Etherian emotions. They were something entirely new. "Come with me," she said. Marcus followed her out of the observation deck and toward the main ceremonial hall. Word of the selection ceremony had spread throughout the station, and beings from dozens of species had gathered to watch. The 3 Etherian males stood in the center of the room, waiting for her choice. Ambassador Drolthara saw them enter and gestured impatiently. "Dr. Kethvari, you are late. Please step forward and make your selection." Zephyra walked into the center of the hall, her skin now blazing so brightly that many of the watching aliens had to shield their eyes. She looked at each of the 3 males in turn, seeing their duty, their reluctance, their barely concealed contempt. Then she turned to Marcus, who had stopped just inside the entrance to the hole. "I have made my choice," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. She walked across the room to where Marcus stood, her bioluminescent patterns growing more beautiful with each step. By the time she reached him, her skin was displaying colors that no Etherian had ever produced, patterns that seemed to contain all the light of the stars themselves. She stopped directly in front of him and looked into his eyes. "Will you be my husband?" she asked. The hall erupted in chaos. The 3 rejected Etherian males stepped backward in shock. Ambassador Drolthara's skin flashed angry red patterns. The Vorthic delegation roared in outrage. Beings throughout the hall began talking all at once, their voices creating a cacophony of surprise and confusion. But in the center of it all, Marcus smiled. "Yes," he said simply. "I will." Zephyra's patterns exploded into a display so magnificent that even the angriest observers fell silent. Every color in the spectrum and several that existed beyond normal vision danced across her skin in waves of pure joy. It was the most beautiful thing anyone in the hall had ever seen. "This is impossible," Ambassador Drelthara shouted over the noise. "Interspecies bonding is forbidden. It goes against everything we believe." "Then, maybe," Zephyra said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her, "it's time to believe something new." She reached out and took Marcus's hand. The moment their fingers touched, her skin settled into a steady, warm glow that seemed to light up the entire hall. For the first time in her life, Zephyra was exactly where she belonged. The news of Zephyra and Marcus's engagement spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. Within days, every major species had sent official responses to the Confederation Council. Most were not supportive. "This is an outrage," declared General Krex of the Vorthic Empire during an emergency council session. "If we allow this genetic contamination to continue, what's next? Sentient machines marrying organic beings? Plants bonding with animals?" Ambassador Drelthara's skin showed deep purple patterns of disgust. "The Etherian delegation formally protests this union. It violates the natural order and threatens the purity of our species." But not everyone opposed the match. Chancellor Vex of the Crystal Alliance had surprised everyone by speaking in favor of the couple. "Perhaps," she had said in her chiming voice, "it is time we reconsidered what makes a proper bond. These two have shown compatibility that many traditional couples never achieve." The debate raged for weeks. Conservative species saw the engagement as a threat to everything they believed about genetics and culture. Progressive species viewed it as the next step in galactic evolution. The Confederation Council found itself split almost evenly. Finally, High Arbiter Jolter called for order. "Since the Council cannot reach consensus, I propose we settle this matter through the traditional means. Let the couple undergo the trials of compatibility. If they pass, their union will have the full backing of the Confederation." Zephyra and Marcus accepted the challenge immediately, even though they both knew the trials were designed to break couples apart by highlighting their differences. The first trial was called the Crisis Simulation. Zephyra and Marcus were placed in a virtual environment where their ship was failing, and they had limited time to reach safety. The test was designed to see how couples handle stress together. "Oxygen levels are dropping," Marcus reported, reading the ship's displays. "We have maybe 10 minutes before life support fails completely." Zephyra was already at the navigation console, her skin bright with concentration. "The nearest station is 15 minutes away at maximum speed. But if we adjust our route through the asteroid field..." "Too dangerous," Marcus said immediately. "One collision and we're dead." Most couples would have argued at this point, each trying to impose their will on the other. But Marcus and Zephyra had learned to combine their strengths. While Zephyra calculated exact trajectories through the asteroids, Marcus used his intuition to sense which route felt safest. Together, they found a path that was both mathematically sound and instinctively right. They reached safety with 30 seconds to spare. The observers were stunned. Most couples took twice as long to complete the simulation, and many failed entirely. How did they coordinate so perfectly without telepathic contact? Asked Dr. Melkor, the Telepathic Institute's representative. The second trial was diplomatic. Zephyra and Marcus were given a complex trade dispute between 3 species and told to negotiate a solution. This test was meant to show how couples handled intellectual challenges together. The problem involved the crystalline traders, who communicated through harmonic resonance, the shade dwellers, who used chemical signals, and the machine collective, who spoke only in mathematical equations. Previous couples had struggled, because they tried to use telepathy to coordinate. But telepathy didn't work across such different forms of consciousness. Marcus listened carefully to each species, then turned to Zephyr. What if we don't try to make them understand each other? What if we translate everything through a common language they all use? What language do they all speak? Zephyr asked. Commerce, Marcus replied with a smile. Trade values, profit margins, resource allocation. They're all here because they want to make money. Working together, they restructured the entire negotiation around economic benefits rather than cultural understanding. Zephyr provided the precise calculations and data analysis, while Marcus read the emotional undertones that numbers couldn't capture. Within 2 hours, they had all three species agreeing to a trade framework that benefited everyone. Remarkable, admitted Arbiter Jolter. They solved in hours what trained diplomats have been working on for months. The third trial was survival. Zephyr and Marcus were dropped on an uninhabited planet with minimal supplies and told to survive for 1 week. This test was designed to show how couples handled physical hardship. The planet was harsh, cold at night, burning hot during the day with little water and hostile wildlife. Most couples struggled because they competed for resources or couldn't agree on priorities. But Zephyr and Marcus approached survival as a scientific problem. Zephyr analyzed the local ecosystem and found safe sources of food and water, while Marcus used human endurance and adaptability to build shelter and tools. When Zephyr's Etherean physiology made the daytime heat dangerous for her, Marcus worked during the hot hours and let her take over during the cooler nights. On the third day, they encountered a pack of the planet's predators, massive lizards with venomous claws. Zephyr's analytical mind quickly identified the creature's hunting patterns and weaknesses, while Marcus's human instincts found a way to use the environment against them. They not only survived the encounter, but managed to drive the predators away from a water source, securing their survival for the rest of the week. They're actually thriving, reported the monitoring team. Most couples just try to endure until rescue. These two have turned survival into a collaborative art form. As word of their success spread, something unexpected began to happen. Opposition to their marriage started to weaken. Even some of the conservative species began to admit that the couple had demonstrated remarkable compatibility. But the extremist factions were not giving up. Led by a coalition of Orthic traditionalists and Etherean purists, they began to plan more drastic measures. The trials proved nothing, General Krex declared in a private meeting. Compatibility in artificial situations doesn't mean they should be allowed to contaminate our gene pool. We must stop this before it goes too far, agreed Matriarch Velara of the Etherean Orthodox sect. If we allow this precedent, our entire way of life will be destroyed. They hatched a plan to kidnap Zephyr during the final trial and take her to a secure location where she could be protected from human influence until she came to her senses. It was illegal and dangerous, but they convinced themselves they were saving galactic civilization. The final trial was called the Unity Test. Couples were required to work together to solve an ancient puzzle that had never been completed. The challenge required not just intelligence and coordination, but also the kind of deep trust that came from perfect understanding. As Zephyr and Marcus entered the testing chamber, neither of them noticed the unmarked ships moving into position around the station. They were focused entirely on each other and the challenge ahead. The puzzle was a massive, crystalline structure that responded to both thought and touch. Previous couples had failed because they couldn't synchronize their mental and physical approaches. But as Marcus placed his hands on the crystal and Zephyr began to analyze its patterns, something extraordinary happened. The crystal began to sing. It was responding not just to their individual abilities, but to something that emerged when they worked together. Marcus's intuitive touch guided Zephyr's logical analysis, While her understanding illuminated pathways his instincts could follow. They weren't just solving the puzzle. They were creating something entirely new. But even as the crystal song grew more beautiful, the extremists were putting their plan into action. Security systems throughout the station began to fail as sabotage programs activated. Emergency alarms started blaring. "What's happening?" Zephyr asked, her concentration broken. Marcus looked around the chamber, his human survival instincts already sensing danger. "I think we're about to face our biggest test yet." Outside the chamber, armed Vorthax soldiers were moving through the corridors while Etherian agents prepared to teleport Zephora away. But they had underestimated something important about humans: their ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. The final confrontation was about to begin. The testing chamber doors burst open as armed Vorthax soldiers stormed inside. Behind them came Matriarch Velara and 3 other Etherian agents, their skin showing the rigid patterns of absolute determination. "Step away from the human," Velara commanded, her voice crackling with telepathic force. "You are coming with us, Zephora. We will not allow you to destroy yourself for this primitive creature." Zephora moved closer to Marcus, her skin flashing with angry red patterns. "I'm not going anywhere with you." General Krex stepped forward, his massive form blocking the chamber exit. "You don't have a choice, defective one. We are saving you from making the biggest mistake in galactic history." "The only mistake here is your thinking," Marcus said calmly. Stepping protectively in front of Zephora, the Vorthax soldiers raised their weapons, but Krex held up a clawed hand. "We don't need to hurt the human. Just take the female and leave him here." "You'll have to go through me," Marcus replied, his voice still calm, but now carrying an edge that made even the soldiers hesitate. Matriarch Velara laughed coldly. "One soft human against trained warriors? You cannot stop us." "Maybe not," Marcus admitted, "but I don't have to stop you alone." As if summoned by his words, the chamber doors opened again. Chancellor Vex of the Crystal Alliance entered, her crystalline form chiming with harmonic authority. Behind her came Dr. Melkor from the Telepathic Institute, several Shade-Dweller diplomats, and even some younger Etherians whose skin showed patterns of rebellion against their elders. "This has gone far enough," Chancellor Vex announced. "You extremists have violated station security, threatened peaceful residents, and attempted to kidnap a fellow scientist. Your actions end now." General Krex snarled, but he was clearly outnumbered. "You fools don't understand what you're protecting. This human contamination will spread if we don't stop it here." "I understand perfectly," said Dr. Melkor, her telepathic abilities radiating calm authority. "I understand that these 2 beings have shown us something we all need to learn." Marcus stepped forward, leaving the protection of the group. Everyone tensed, expecting violence, but instead he began to speak. "General Krex," he said, addressing the massive Vorthax directly, "I know you think I'm a threat to your way of life. You see humans as primitive, dangerous, unpredictable. But look around this room. Look at who came to help us." The general's eyes moved across the diverse group that had gathered to protect the couple. Crystalline beings, telepaths, shade-dwellers, even some of your own species, Marcus continued. "They didn't come because I convinced them with superior logic or mental powers. They came because they believe in something simple, that love and understanding matter more than fear and tradition." "Primitive nonsense," Matriarch Velara spat, but her skin patterns showed uncertainty. "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But this primitive nonsense has already changed things. 3 weeks ago, none of these species would have worked together to help an Etherian and a human. Now look at us." He gestured to the mixed group, beings who had rarely spoken to each other before now standing united. "Zephora and I aren't trying to destroy anyone's culture," Marcus continued. We're trying to show that different cultures can create something beautiful together. Just like that puzzle we were solving. He pointed to the crystalline structure, which was still glowing and singing softly from their interrupted work. For thousands of years, beings have tried to solve that puzzle using only their own species' abilities. They all failed. But when Zephyra and I worked on it together, combining Etherian logic with human intuition, it began to sing. It was responding to something new. The harmony that comes when different strengths work together instead of against each other. Young Etherian scientist Dr. Nexquan stepped forward, his skin showing thoughtful purple patterns. The human speaks truth. I have studied their research together. They accomplish things neither could achieve alone. As do we all, added Chancellor Vex. The Crystal Alliance exists because different mineral-based species learn to combine their unique properties. Diversity has always been strength, not weakness. General Krex lowered his weapon slightly. You ask us to ignore millions of years of evolution, to abandon the boundaries that have kept our species pure and strong. I'm asking you to consider that maybe those boundaries were never about strength, Marcus replied. Maybe they were about fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of change. Fear of discovering that we're all more similar than we are different. He looked around the room at all the assembled beings. Every species here has something unique to offer. The Vorthic have incredible strength and honor. The Etherians have brilliant minds and beautiful souls. The crystalline beings have perfect harmony and endless patience. But imagine what we could accomplish if we combined all those gifts instead of keeping them separate. Matriarch Velara's skin patterns had shifted from rigid authority to deep confusion. But the genetic implications, the cultural contamination. There is no contamination, Zephyra said, speaking for the first time since the confrontation began. There is only growth. Marcus hasn't changed who I am. He's helped me become more fully myself than I ever was before. Her skin began to glow with the same beautiful patterns she had displayed when she first told Marcus she loved him. I spent my whole life thinking I was broken because I couldn't touch minds with other Etherians. But Marcus taught me that there are many ways to connect with another being. Through words, through work, through shared dreams and hopes and fears. She moved to stand beside Marcus, taking his hand. I am still Etherian. I will always be Etherian. But now I am also something new, part of a bond that transcends species. Part of a love that shows what the galaxy could become if we chose understanding over fear. The room fell silent except for the gentle singing of the crystal puzzle. Even the soldiers had lowered their weapons completely, caught up in the power of her words. Finally, General Krex spoke. If we allow this, if we accept interspecies bonding, where does it end? It doesn't end, Marcus said simply. It begins. It begins a new chapter in galactic civilization, where every being is valued for who they are, not what species they belong to. Where love is more important than genetics, and understanding matters more than tradition. Chancellor Vex stepped forward and began to chime in harmonious tones. The Crystal Alliance recognizes the bond between Dr. Zephyra Cathvari and Dr. Marcus. Chun is valid and worthy of protection. Dr. Melkor nodded. The Telepathic Institute concurs. We have observed their mental compatibility and find it remarkable. One by one, the other beings in the room voiced their support. Even some of the Vordak soldiers removed their helmets and bowed respectfully to the couple. General Krex looked around at his own troops, seeing their faces full of wonder rather than anger. Finally, he too lowered his weapons. Perhaps, he said slowly, it is time for the Vorthic Empire to consider new possibilities. Matriarch Velara was the last to speak. Her skin had gone through dozens of pattern changes as she struggled with everything she had believed. At last, she settled on deep blue, the color of acceptance. "If this is the future," she said quietly, "then perhaps Etherian wisdom lies in adapting to it rather than fighting it." 3 months later, the station's main ceremonial hall was decorated with symbols from every species in the Confederation. Beings who had never attended each other's cultural events now filled the space, all gathered to witness something that had never happened before in galactic history. Zephyra stood at the center of the hall, her skin displaying patterns so beautiful and complex that they seemed to contain the light of every star in the galaxy. She wore traditional Etherian ceremonial robes modified with human wedding elements, something old and something new combined into something perfect. Marcus waited for her in a formal suit that had been woven with threads that chimed softly when he moved, a gift from the Crystal Alliance. On his chest, he wore a small pin made from the same crystal they had been working on when the extremists attacked, a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species work together. The ceremony itself was a blend of traditions from dozens of cultures. Etherian light patterns mixed with human vows, crystalline harmonic blessings combined with Varthic demonstrations of strength and protection. It was chaotic and beautiful and completely unprecedented. When the time came for vows, Zephyra spoke first. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, "you saw light where others saw only darkness. You found beauty where others saw only defects. You taught me that love doesn't require telepathy. It only requires two hearts willing to understand each other. I promised to share my life with you, to explore the universe with you, and to show the galaxy that different can be better." Marcus's vow was simpler, but no less profound. "Zephyra, you are the brightest star in any sky, the most brilliant mind I have ever known, and the kindest soul I have ever encountered. I promise to stand beside you, to support your dreams, and to love you exactly as you are for all the days of my life." As they kissed, Zephyr's bioluminescent patterns exploded into a display so magnificent that several beings actually cheered. But more importantly, throughout the hall, other interspecies couples moved closer together. The barriers that had seemed insurmountable just months before had begun to crumble.